I see, oh, Patty from Gig Harbor. Great. Got Yvonne from Louisville, Kentucky. Andrea from Mission Viejo. Mindy from New Jersey. Welcome, everyone.
So welcome, and thank you guys so much for being here. I'm super excited for this opportunity. I'm Meg Cook, and my store or my brand is called Paisley, and this is about using Boom in the classroom. And Paisley is my French bulldog. So again, I'm Meg Cook, and my brand is Paisley. I am a wife, and I have a beautiful, almost 3-year-old son, TJ, and my Frenchie Paisley, who my business name was inspired after. So I went to college in New Hampshire. I've been teaching elementary school for 9 years. I'm currently teaching 4th grade, but I've taught several different grade levels, mostly younger than 4th. I'm also a registered yoga teacher. I was also certified in mindfulness, social emotional learning. I love all of that stuff. And this is my 2nd year being an entrepreneur, where I sell my products and share my products and freebies on Boom Learning and Teachers Pay Teachers. So I wanted to start with a description about what Boom Learning is. I'm sure that most of you are familiar, but just in case, it's an educational app or website you can use on either. They are digital task cards. You can use them to supplement any curriculum, any lesson. One of the best parts is that it's for any subject, any grade level that you could possibly think of, any age. And you can buy decks not only in the Boom store, but also on Teachers Pay Teachers. There's so many benefits of Boom Learning. I'm always telling all my teacher friends all about it. And I can't believe I didn't hear about this until 2 years ago. But I love that it's no prep, it's paperless, it's just simple. The kids can be very independent on it. They're super engaging, they're colorful, they're bright, there's noises, there's drag and drop, there's so many options. It really helps the children work on their technology skills. I love that they're self-grading and they're self-pacing, self-guiding, and it's almost like having a one-on-one tutor working with a child. They can't kind of move on or progress until they know they've gotten the right answer. And also there is a way to track data and reports, and it's constantly updating on its own. It's all live online, and you can always look back at student reports and look over their data and see how they're doing and performing in that level. Assigning Boom card decks. There's a few ways to do this. First, you need to make sure that you have an account. You could set up a class or multiple classes. For instance, I teach 4th grade. I teach 2 classes because we switch subjects for math. So I have a math class and a homeroom class. So of course we have different decks for different classes depending on the subject. I also have a class for my yoga club that I teach after school, which will have more of my yoga Boom cards in there. So to assign them, you click Assign Decks. Once you go visit your class, you can click Assign Decks. You select the desired decks that you want, and then you can assign them decks. You can have bundles of decks. There's freebies, and there's ones available for purchase as well, and the prices vary. There's lots of options for differentiation. You can assign the decks to a certain class, like I just mentioned. You can assign it to just individual students, a small group, the whole group, all of your classes. The students have unlimited chances to replay decks as long as you keep them in your student's library. They can replay them as many times, and it will automatically update their scores and their progress and the reports. You can reassign decks to students that you feel they're struggled with that skill, and maybe you cleared out their library. You could go ahead and reassign them that deck or ask them to go ahead and redo that deck. And like I mentioned before, that self-pacing, that self-grading, that really helps keep them confident. They get super excited when they hear that ding sound, they got one right. They don't get discouraged when they get something wrong, because it really does feel like a game to them instead of doing schoolwork. The data tracking in progress. The instant feedback and self-grading, as I mentioned, it just auto updates the scores as the students are playing. So you never have to worry about going back and erasing in your grade book. It's just consistently updating already for you, which saves you so much time as a teacher. It creates multiple different types of reports, and there's lots of different options. So for instance, maybe you wanted to look by that deck or that class or just that student. So there's a lot of different options on there to track their data, and you don't have to do anything besides click a few buttons, which is awesome. Compatibility with devices. Another awesome feature about Boom Learning is that it's available on any device. So no matter what devices you have in your classroom, you have iPads, you have laptops, any type of smart board, it should be compatible with any type of technology. And as I mentioned earlier, you can go ahead and go on the App Store and you could download the app, or you can go directly on the browser. And I actually use both options quite often in the classroom, and they both work equally well. An interactive smartboard is the best for Boom cards. I just experienced this year with having an older model of a smartboard, and it was not touchscreen, so the students weren't able to come up and interact as much. So what I did was I had them get little mini whiteboards, and then they would show me the answer, or they would come up one at a time to my computer and click on the right answer. But then when I got a newer TV, a newer smartboard, they were able to actually come up and drag and drop. We were able to download the app and use the app on there. However, I find that I mostly use the browser because I would rather play them in preview mode from my account than logging in as a student and having that impact their data. So using the interactive smartboards, there's a lot of amazing things you can do with this. As I said, I like to display my decks in preview mode, meaning that it's from my teacher account. You can model how to complete the decks. So I used to actually taught kindergarten the last 5 years. And so I'm very familiar with those little ones, and they need a lot of help, especially with technology, believe it or not. And you could show them the actual specific directions. So if you need to cover or move and hide something, or just the direct, sometimes they're multi-step direction Boom cards, right? So it's great for them to learn, follow directions. Let's do a whole deck together as a whole group. So then, you know, when I send you to do this independently, you're going to be all set. I like to teach whole group lessons. Like I said, they can come up and take turns. So I do the popsicle stick thing, and they can come up and take turns answering the questions, and it keeps them all super engaged and alert and interacting, because they never know when they're going to get called on. They're so excited to have an opportunity to come up and play on the smart board. And they're always asking if we can do a Boom deck, like every day, both of my classes, even in 4th grade. So for individual student devices, as I mentioned, you can use any type of device. So no matter how old or new your devices are, I have some pretty old laptops for my kiddos, so they work just fine with Boom. So you want to have a student-friendly, they're very like a student-friendly login. So you can do a QR code that they can scan. For the little ones, you can give them a little picture password. They have to memorize what animal picture to click on. And you can also print actual cards on Boom. Once you set up your store, you can go and print out all of the individual username cards so that all of your students have a copy of their login. With the younger kids, I would actually put theirs on a necklace, and then I would recollect them after centers, so that way they could independently go and log in, because they couldn't memorize their login information at that age. With my older students, I have a different system where I have a consistency amongst all the usernames. Like for instance, it's their first name, last name, dash my last initial, right? And all their passwords are the same. However, you might not want to do that, because, you know, when kids logging into each other's account, that has not been a problem for me. And that's helped me as a teacher to keep track of my kids' logins and passwords. Otherwise, I'm like forgetting, you know, I don't know off the top of my head, or they lose their card type of thing. So it's up to you as the teacher of what you think is the easiest way. With the little ones, I would definitely print and laminate those login cards for them, so you always have access to them. These are amazing for independent learning. The kids can redo the decks as many times as they want to. And the fun thing about that is most of the time I find I don't have to encourage them to do so. They see their own data. And even as young as in kindergarten, they're like, oh, I could do better than that. And they oftentimes want to go back and improve their score because, again, kids are competitive and they like playing games. The students have choices. They can pick which decks they do, which order they do the decks in, however many times they want to do the decks. Supplementing curriculum in so many ways. I use boom cards for like literally everything I possibly can. They're just so open-ended, and I love making decks. So I just kind of tend to DIY whatever and customize it to whatever I need to teach my students or classes. We use them for brain breaks. We can do different yoga poses, different exercises, get up and get moving. They're great for warming up, morning work activities, or reviewing at the end of a class or a lesson. Independent centers or small group centers. They even have mini books on there where you could pull a small reading group and do a read aloud and do reading comprehension questions and have your entire small group already basically planned out for you without any prep or printing, which is awesome. I like to use them for introducing a new skill and sometimes modeling the directions, especially with those multi-step direction boom cards, even for the older kids. They don't always pay attention to all the directions. And also they're great for informal assessments. So, especially with some of the curriculum, especially with us in particular at our school, our science and our social studies, we need a lot more supplementing because those textbooks tend to be a little dry, right? So we would like to supplement, especially with boom cards. And you can make any deck. You can I often actually take the textbook and create my own deck based off of that information so that I can assess them in a fun way. That's not, this dry, boring content. It kind of brings it more to life for them. Creating customized decks. So like I said, there's endless options and there's so many fun, unique ways to use boom cards. One interesting way that we've used them is the how-to steps on how to make dirt cups for Earth Day. And I actually made this for kindergarten, but I used it again in 4th grade. And you're never too old to have fun, right? And the kids loved having the steps to go through. So yeah, who knew? You can actually use them for food recipes. I mean, honestly, anything. So teachers can create decks. They're so much fun to make. It's kind of like making an interactive PowerPoint slideshow. You could customize it to specific lessons. Like I said, take a look at the textbook and pull the key important information and turn it into something more exciting and engaging, or include that content that you feel is missing and kind of put it all together in the same place. You can combine subjects. So perhaps you want to do an end of the year review activity and you want to mix and match different subjects. You can have a multi-subject boom card deck. For instance, I also have some yoga card boom decks that are also, so it's math yoga, number yoga, right? Alphabet yoga. So it's combining 2 skills there of yoga, but also reading or learning their numbers or things like that. You can incorporate student feedback. So my kids love boom cards. They play them all the time. And they're always asking me like, Miss Cook, can you make a new deck? Can you make a deck that has our names in it for math word problems and just silly things like that? But sometimes they actually have really good ideas. And the more that we take their feedback and apply it, the more engaged they are in learning and the better they'll be performing. Boom cards for movement. So I've mentioned yoga a whole bunch because that's my jam. I know it's not for everybody though. So there's tons of other ways that you can use them for movement, any type of physical education. You can do mindfulness activities. You can do social emotional learning. Some examples of those are just sometimes there's even little breathing activities or ones that share different situations about how to deal with social emotional learning or how to process your emotions. I definitely want to dive deeper into those types of boom decks and exploring what's out there and also creating those. But I am the most familiar with creating and downloading the yoga style of boom cards because that's just my particular preference. So my teacher tips and suggestions, and I had mentioned this, was print those login cards for the students. Provide a variety of decks for your students at all times. If you have like 5 decks in there, especially the older grades, are going to go boop, 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 go through all of them and say, What do I do next? That dreaded question that nobody wants, especially when the kids are on technology and supposed to be having independent time. So encourage them to replay those tough decks, the ones that they may have struggled with if they don't willingly want to on their own. Um, I like to update and remove assignments consistently to keep the library organized. So that the kids don't get overwhelmed or be like, oh, I've had these like same 20 decks sitting in my library all year, or like, especially seasonal ones too. I like to put different seasonal ones or ones for the holidays and then clear them out. And that's the awesome part about being able to reassign that is that, hey, if you want to go back to something from earlier in the year and review that, you can reassign that at any time to the student, even if you already cleared it out. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, especially for your patience with the technical difficulties at the beginning. I know you can all relate being teachers and educators. You can visit me on Boom Learning and Teachers Pay Teachers. I have a ton of Boom cards. That's my jam. I'm also on Instagram, WordPress, and Pinterest. And my email is primarypaisley@gmail.com. I love to network with other teachers and educators. I love to share ideas, answer any of your questions, share tips, and communicate. So feel free to reach out to me. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meg, for this awesome presentation. I was so excited to hear that actually you use boom cards for movement. So you combine boom cards use it for teaching math, and you combine that learning of that math skill with a movement skill. Do you think that how does it reinforce the math skill when you combine it with yoga or something?
Any sort of active movement, singing, dancing, yoga, stretching, any sort of movement while learning trains your brain to memorize that information. There's been a lot of research done that students tend to learn better and actually remember the information if there's some type of movement or exercise or song associated with it. So they can kind of use that energy and sync it up with their brain and learning.
I had no idea. But that makes total sense. I just might take a question from the audience here. Mary Jo has her hand raised. Hang on, Mary Jo. I am going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Where did it go? Mary Jo, did you put your hand down? I think you did. All right. Oh, here it goes. All right, Mary Jo, what's your question?
Well, I didn't mean to do it, but I'll go ahead and ask the question. I wasn't able to log on quite at the beginning. So I kind of missed how you were explaining how you made them, individualized for the kids or whatever, so they could log in. Is there a way I can get that information again?
Sure, like how the students have their own individual logins. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yep. So on Boom, they make it so easy for you where you can actually print out your class roster that shows all of their logins, and it makes these little mini business cards for them. Print them right out, laminate them, cut them up, and then you could save them for the kids. They each get their own login name and password. And there's a lot of options for making their login name super simple, something they'll remember. And for the younger kids, they have different options for the password where they have a picture password option. There's also a QR scan code option. So there's a few different options on how you want to print your login cards, but it's already, once you enter in your roster, it'll already be in there. You can just print them right out. So it makes it really easy for them.
Okay, so it's all kind of set up on the Boom site, and
yes,
you can just go in and start entering the kids. And okay.
Yes, it's very, very convenient and user friendly.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mary Jo, we actually have an Intro to Boom Learning webinar, and that's going to be the first. It's on every first Wednesday of the month. So the next one will be, gosh, I don't know what that date falls on in June, but I'm going to send you a link to register for that. in that webinar, we take you step by step through the process of adding classrooms to your Boom account, adding students to those classrooms, setting up those passwords so the students can log in. The benefit of logging in as a student is that you get access to all those rich data reports that includes performance and progress tracking that Meg referred to. And you can even download and export the reports into an Excel file for your gradebook or for any type of reporting you might be doing. So I'll send that registration link to all of you actually in a follow-up email if you'd like to join. And again, we'll take you step by step through that process.
Okay, thank you. I'm a speech pathologist, and I keep hearing about it, and I just have not had time to put that into my little toolbox, but I would really, really like to. So thank you. I'll check that out. I'll look for the email.
Absolutely. I see so many speech pathologists using Boom cards. So.
Absolutely. It seems to be one of the favorite tools of speech language pathologists. And I think it goes way back a couple of years. I had no idea of this until recently, but ASHA is a huge speech speech therapy association, and our co-founders did a webinar, a training for during one of their conferences, and it actually set a record for the most attendees of a Zoom meeting at that point. I think there were over 45,000 attendees. Yeah, so I think that's maybe where we got our start there. Yeah. Absolutely. Getting back to the questions here, Yvonne asks, my district does not allow us to assign Boom cards. So the only way I use them in class was with kids coming up to tap on the smart panel. What advice do you have for those of us in that situation?
I don't know. I can't argue with the district. I'm sorry though, and I can relate certain things, like there's certain apps and things that I loved using in my classroom, and that's happened to us too because of privacy concerns and things like that. But it is good that you can still use them as a whole group. But it sounds like it will be tough for you to get away with using them independently.
I think I have a suggestion for Yvonne. So first off, student privacy is one of our top priorities here. And we were just certified by IMS Global as a trusted app. So they review how all of our privacy and security policies in order to, and it's a very rigorous process. And in order to qualify for that certification, we had to meet a lot of rules and regulations. We are very willing, Yvonne, to work with your district to make sure we meet their privacy requirements. So do email us at help@boomlearning.com and we can get your district on the way to allowing Boom cards in your classroom. Another thing is that you don't have to add students to your account, your teacher account. You can still assign Boom cards to them without students logging in. That means we do not have your student data whatsoever. And that's called Fast Play. So Fast Play is a way to assign Boom cards. Let's see if I've got my open up here. Try and share my screen with you and show you how to use Fast Play. Okay, so I'm actually in my teacher account, and let's say that was my report. I'm in my library. This is a list of, I hope you're seeing, are you seeing my, no, I'm not. Okay, here we go. There we go. Yeah. This is a list of all of my decks that are in my library. If I want to assign a deck where students do not have to log in, I can go to the specific deck. I'll click the blue action button. It's a drop-down menu, and I'll click Fast Pin. And what this does, it generates a fast pin for me, and I can click this URL right here. I've just copied that link to my clipboard, and I can paste it in on their computers. I can give them this 4-digit code for them to log into that assignment if they go to our website, or I can push this through like Google Assignments or any LMS that your students may use, Seesaw, Schoology, anything like that. They simply click on it and they will start playing the boom card. And you don't need to require them to log in, and therefore we will not be saving their student data. So that's one way you can make sure that you can use boom cards in your classroom, and that we do not do anything to against your district's privacy rules. All right, I'm going to go to another question here. Karen asked, I have trouble removing assignments from individual students. Can you tell us how?
Removing assignments from individual students. To be perfectly honest with you, I actually have not done that before. I've always just done it the whole class clearing out type of system.
Mm-hmm. I might be able to help you there. Let me share my screen again. Okay, let's say I'm going to go back to my classes tab here, and I'm going to go into a classroom. You can see my students right here. And if I click on a student, let me to assign. So you can see all the different assignments I have for Alexis. And if I want to unassign this particular deck just from Alexis's account, I can simply uncheck it just like that. It will not affect the other students' assignments. This just pertains to this student, Alexis. So you can check and uncheck assignments within the student's account. Again, I'll show you how I did that. I went to the student, the drop down, assign, and uncheck anything or check any assignments you want to give them. Okay, so I have more questions for you. Like I said, I love that you showed us how you use boom cards for movement, and I didn't know. I don't know if a lot of you know that PE teachers actually use boom cards as well, and I was kind of surprised with that. You talk about social emotional learning, and that seems to be a really a topic that's in real high demand right now in schools. Students seem to be experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression, probably having difficulty transitioning from remote learning back into in-person learning, and they're acting out as a result. So we're seeing teachers really ask for resources for social emotional learning. I'm wondering, Meg, what topics for SEL really resonate with your students?
Basically the major character traits like respect, responsibility, just self-awareness. It's hard to put into just a few words, but there's so many variables with including the movement and making that connection with the mindfulness and the like, for instance, I'd say more of like having different scenarios that they can act out, right? Or reading different scenarios of social situations, right, that would be very applicable to them in their situations, and then having a task cards that would ask them what's the best way to handle this scenario. So things that you might not even think that you would have to ask children. For example, today we did an activity where we had to answer questions on the cards. We're asking different ways of showing respect. That was literally it, and it was in 4th grade. You have to remember these kids were home for 2 years in a pandemic, and they're very behind on social skills, emotional skills, awareness. They've been exposed to a ton of trauma. These are not normal times, right? So this is just so essential. It's always been essential, but it's more essential than ever before. And you really do have to simplify it and spell it out for them. And things that you might think are common sense or come to them naturally aren't anymore. And so it might sound foreign to be like, oh, a boom card deck on respect, on, empathy, sympathy, right? Compassion. What does that word mean? How do I show that? How do I feel that? What does that look like in other people? What are these facial expressions? Even with the kindergartners, you could have them do a boom deck and showing different facial expressions and having to choose, what does that mean? What is that showing? You can include sounds with that. You could tell them different stories and ask them how they could show up better, or how another person could show up better, and just kind of getting that conversation started. And I guess the biggest thing is self-awareness of how do I treat myself? How do I treat others? I'm very passionate about stuff.
I can understand that. I can also so how would you incorporate like breathing exercises in your boom cards?
There's like a whole bunch of different ways that you can have them do, like a rainbow, right? And then they have to take a breath, right, for the rainbow, where they could take something and they could drag it over, right? And then to inhale and exhale, then go over the next color, something like that. Or they could do a breathing technique where they inhale on one slide and then exhale on the next slide. And there's a bunch of fun and simple ways, like blowing a balloon, right? And then popping the balloon, just a flower growing and then shrinking, just very simple ways. And it doesn't even have to be that thorough or that detailed. Like I said, keeping it simple, because they're just actually, it's better to keep it simple, to not clog when it comes to this stuff, it's better to keep it simple and not clog or fog their brain, right? Because it's this release for them. So having something simple, but engaging and beautiful, like a rainbow or a unicorn, something that's going to make them feel like that's going to be calming for them. They're just going to take the time to slow down and breathe. And you can make it a fun breathing technique, because obviously no kid's just going to be like, breathe for 3 seconds, and then, but you can include fun clip art and things like that. And you can also include the voiceover, especially for the younger kids, and you could guide them through. You could do guided meditation boom cards. I mean, there's so many options.
Take us through kind of one of your guided meditation boom cards. I'm totally fascinated by that.
So I haven't actually created a deck yet, but I'm up for the challenge. But I have some like bundles on Teachers Pay Teachers, where I have boom cards are part of it. So I have boom cards as like the poses, right, to show them the step and a picture of the pose, and then they could click through and do the next pose and that type of thing. But then I also would have like a guided meditation that's included in there. So I like to sync it up with the category. And thanks for the idea, because I'm totally going to turn to boom cards now. But basically, like I have a camping yoga bundle, right? And I have all these different poses, like tent pose. And they're obviously just normal yoga poses, but then you change the name to make them engaging, right? Tent pose. And you can have like I did a s'mores breath activity on that one, where it's like blow on the marshmallow to exhale, right? Inhale and then exhale to blow out the marshmallow. And then there's a guided meditation that comes with it. And then it's like, visualizing yourself at a peaceful campfire and, just going through the details of like, it's a starry night, and take a deep breath, and just imagining that you're actually in that place. and taking them to basically a safe place where they visualize that they're there and they're doing those activities. So then your brain doesn't know the difference between what your body's doing, your brain's doing. So it actually does awaken all of these endorphins and serotonin in the brain, because it's actually triggering those parts of you, making you feel like you really are in that special place.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I'd love to see more boom cards like that. I'll be on the
Yeah, and
lookout
the boom cards
in
help
your
them
store.
visualize, right? They can't keep their eyes closed the whole time, especially the younger
Yeah.
kids. I would get them to, the visualization and the keep it
And
sound
I've
effects.
actually tried to do some of that with my children. And I think that's the difficulty. If they can't see what they're supposed to be doing, they don't understand the benefits of it naturally. So actually seeing those poses, or having something visual that takes them through the action, like breathing, makes total sense to me, and how it actually um, connects that concept with the child. So that makes total sense. Um, you also mentioned you use it for assessments. And do you design or do you design assessment boom cards to prep for any end of year testing?
I haven't yet, but definitely could be. This was our last year. I'm in Florida, so this is our last year doing the FSA, which is our big statewide assessment, and they're changing it over next year. So that's kind of, and it's my first year in fourth grade where we give that assessment, because I was in kindergarten before. So that's not something I have quite explored with boom cards, but all throughout the year, I've been using boom cards to assess my students on all sorts of skills, like, for instance, the science and social studies. Like I mentioned, we need a lot of supplementing there. And like some of them don't have built-in assessments. So that's a great way for me to assess my students in a fun and simple way. So then I can just make it something that's like more engaging for them. And then I can just go on, I look at the reports, and then I also like that they can go back and replay the deck, or I can reassign it to them. I can give them another chance, because it's totally different than saying, turning the paper back to them, that dreaded erasing and reading, but then they can go back and like replay. It just makes it so much easier for both you and the student, because they're more willing.
And speaking of reports, what aspect of our reports do you find most valuable?
I find that most of the time I like to look at it by the deck, and then I can kind of see across the board how the students performed, who's struggling with what. When I taught kindergarten, I made my decks very specific to the standards, and really simplify it to just that standard, where I was targeting just one standard, like for math, for instance, right? And then I would look and I would be able to break it down and be like, okay, that's who's getting it and who's struggling with this specific thing. So yeah, there's so many ways that I use the information, but I would say that that's probably the majority of the way. Another way too is to pull up multiple decks, right? Like I mentioned with the kindergarten thing. Let's say I had to give them a grade for a math test, right? But I would have individual decks on each standard, and then I could pull up a report that showed all of those decks next to each other, and that would show me this overview of like, okay, Johnny's struggling with standard, K point, MD point, whatever, right? And Susie's mastering it. And that would help me to organize my small groups and see, okay, so-and-so needs more instruction with this skill. And so it's really, and I love that it's constantly updating for you.
Yeah, I think as of now, we just expanded it so that it keeps the last 5 plays of a deck for each student. So you can see how they progressed in the last 5 times they played it. So I like that as well. I love the idea of actually seeing a student progress
And for
and
them to be
having the
able to
data to
see
back it up.
their own progress, even from a young age, it makes it so easy for them to see that, and like to encourage them and teach them that skill. So yeah, like at any age, oh, I can try again. I'm not a failure. I just try again. I'm sorry, but I try again. It's totally, different mindset and outlook.
Yeah, we try to encourage. We don't want to make a mistake being very punitive. We want to encourage the student to keep trying until they learn the subject matter. So, yeah.
And another thing to note about that is how it just does like, boop, like a little, it's not this rough consequence of like, it's wrong, this big X, this big red X across the screen. It's just kind of like, oh, womp womp, and I think that's really helpful too. It motivates them to keep wanting to do more.
Yes, definitely we want to encourage them to try again. So speaking of the end of year, do you use boom cards in particular for any end of year activities? What are you doing now to kind of finish out the year, where the students are really squirrely, they're probably bouncing off the walls, they can't wait for summer vacation.
Yeah, I've actually been reassigning a lot of decks from throughout the year. Because like I said, I like to clear them out seasonally. And I mean, you might think it's weird, but I don't care if you're doing a Halloween themed deck from like October, if you need to review your multiplication, so I actually love being able to go back, and they're funny too, because they're like, oh, I loved this one, because they'll miss the decks if you take them away for a little while. So it's actually cool to be able to go back and be like, oh yeah, this is what we did back then, and reassigning those. And that way you have all sorts of review activities built in without having to create this massive, overwhelming deck of, this cumulative deck of everything you've done throughout the year. So that's how
you're able to kind of reinforce all those lessons you taught throughout the year. So it's kind of nice, a nice review of everything that they learned. I want to thank you so much for joining us again and giving this great presentation. For all of you out there, we are going to send you a follow-up email with a recording of this and some important ways that you can contact Meg for more information. If you look in your chat box right now, there are links to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and as well as the next webinar, Intro to Boom Learning. If you want to sign up for that, it's free. There's also a link to Meg's store, so check out her cool boom cards. And finally, last but not least, please fill out our webinar feedback form. Your feedback means a lot to us, and it will help us figure out what future webinars to put on for you. So in the meantime, we hope to see you maybe on one of our Facebook groups, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. If you do have a question, just email us at help@boomlearning.com. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now, everybody.
Good night.